In the sprawling metropolis of Nova Terra, humans and aliens coexisted under an uneasy truce, bound by interstellar treaties and a shared commercial dependency. At the heart of this city, tucked away in a massive structure of steel and pulsating energy shields, was the top-secret facility known as the Hold. This was no ordinary prison. It was a research center where the most unique species across galaxies were held, not just for safekeeping, but for experiments that often skirted moral boundaries. Amid the countless cells and containment units, one chamber was unlike any other. It was an enormous dome-shaped enclosure made of an unbreakable, transparent material. Inside, a majestic figure hovered in stasis, a female of the Yearlich species, known across the universe for their wisdom and telepathic abilities. She was the alien queen, a ruler without her kingdom, snatched from her world under dire circumstances. Her name was Seraphel, and her eyes, closed in forced slumber, flickered with the echoes of her stolen freedom. On the periphery of the Hold's towering walls, a young researcher named Eli Walker worked tirelessly. With a background in xenobiology and a heart that beat with unyielding compassion for alien life forms, Eli found himself increasingly at odds with the facility's operations. Each day, as he navigated through corridors lined with creatures crying out in silent suffering, his resolve grew. It wasn't just his job on the line, it was his very soul. Eli's days were split between his lab and the observation decks. It was during one of his routine checks on Seraphil that he noticed something peculiar. The usual data streams flickering on the monitors began showing anomalies. Her brain activity was spiking. Intrigued and concerned, he reviewed the surveillance tapes. What he saw chilled him to the core. There were moments when Seraphil seemed to be trying to communicate, her face contorting in distress, reaching out through the prison of her mind. Determined to understand more, Eli began to spend his nights researching the Yearlichs, delving into ancient texts and band transmissions. He learned of their deep connection to the cosmos, their ability to communicate through dreams, and their governance by empathy and telepathy. The more he learned, the more he realized how cruel their queen's captivity was. One evening, as the artificial lights of Nova Terra dimmed to mimic the night cycle, Eli sat in his cramped quarters, piecing together a dangerous plan. He knew that freeing Seraphel was a near impossible feat, fraught with peril not just from the facility's security, but from the potential political fallout. The Yearlichs were not just any species. They were a pivotal ally in the Galactic Council. Her abduction had been kept a well-guarded secret, one that could spark interstellar conflict if exposed. Eli's plan was simple yet audacious. He would use his clearance to access Seraphel's chamber during the facility's scheduled maintenance downtime, when surveillance would be minimal. From there, he would disable her stasis field and use a prototype mind-link device he had been developing in secret. This device, originally intended for deep space communication, could potentially bridge the gap between him and Seraphel, allowing them to communicate directly. As the night of the operation approached, Eli double-checked every detail, his hands trembling not from fear, but from the weight of hope. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about freeing a captive queen. It was about righting a profound wrong. On the chosen night, cloaked in the shadows of the dimmed corridors, Eli made his way to the heart of the Hold. Each step was heavier than the last, his equipment bag slung over his shoulder, heavy with the burden of consequence. As he neared the chamber, his breath caught in his throat. There, illuminated by the soft glow of security lights, Seraphel floated, her presence as regal as it was tragic. Eli paused, his hand on the chamber door's keypad, a single code entry away from changing the course of history. His heart raced, his mind whirled with the possibilities of what the next moments held, and with a deep breath, he pushed the numbers. The door hissed open, and Eli Walker stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next in his quest to free the alien queen. Inside the chamber, the air was thick with an energy that seemed to hum with the life force of Seraphil herself. Eli's footsteps echoed softly as he approached the stasis field generator. The device was a complex array of circuits and glowing conduits, its design more art than engineering. With practiced hands, he disconnected the power, and the humming ceased. The field shimmered and dissolved, leaving the alien queen suspended in a more natural, though still unnatural, slumber. Eli wasted no time. He removed the mind-link device from his bag, a sleek, helmet-like contraption fitted with neural sensors and a myriad of tiny, blinking lights. Gently, he placed it atop Seraphel's head, its sensors automatically adjusting to the unique physiology of the Ehrlichs. His own counterpart, a simpler, more human-adapted version, he secured on himself. The connection initiated, a symphony of lights and sounds enveloping them. Eli's vision blurred, and a rush of images and emotions that were not his own flooded his senses. It was disorienting, overwhelming, yet profoundly enlightening. He was inside Seraphel's mind, seeing her memories play out like vivid dreams. Her planet, a swirl of colors and light, her people communicating in harmonious waves of emotion. Eli felt a pang of sadness for the world she had lost. As the initial torrent subsided, a clearer connection formed. Eli sensed her consciousness stirring, confused but aware. He reached out with his thoughts carefully, reassuringly. "Seraphil, can you understand me?" he projected, unsure if his mental voice would translate across species. There was a pause, a breath of cosmic winds in his mind, then a voice, clear and melodious, yet tinged with pain. "Yes, I hear you, stranger. Who are you that walks in my mind?" "I'm Eli, a researcher. I'm here to help you," he responded, his mental voice growing stronger with confidence. "Help? Your kind has imprisoned me, taken me from my home. How are you different?" Her skepticism was a sharp lance, her hurt a deeper shadow. Eli's guilt twisted at his core. "Not all humans agree with what has been done to you. I'm risking everything to make it right." There was a long silence, then a sense of probing, gentle yet invasive, as Seraphil searched his intentions. Finally, she withdrew, her presence receding slightly. "What do you plan to do, Eli of Terra?" Eli explained his plan to escape the hold and seek asylum within the Interstellar Council, to bring her case before the galactic representatives. As he spoke, he sensed her growing interest, her cautious hope igniting like a star being born. "The path you propose is fraught with peril," Seraphil mused. "Many will seek to stop us, and you, a human, would face grave consequences for this defiance." "I know," Eli acknowledged, "but it's worth it. You don't belong here. None of the beings in this facility do." Her agreement was a soft wave of gratitude that washed over him. "Then we must act swiftly, Eli. The longer we remain, the greater the risk of discovery." Together, they formulated a plan. Using his clearance, Eli would transport Seraphel out of the hold using a maintenance shuttle, one of the few ships that regularly left the facility without thorough checks. They would need to avoid detection from the myriad of security measures, and every step would need to be perfectly timed. The first step was to physically move Seraphel out of the containment area to the shuttle bay. Eli carefully disconnected the mind link, their newly forged alliance still a delicate tether between their minds. He lifted Seraphel with ease, her species was lighter than their appearance suggested, and began the precarious journey through the dimly lit hallways of the hold. Every shadow seemed to stretch towards them, every sound a potential alarm. Eli's heart thudded in his chest, a relentless drum of war against the fear gnawing at his resolve. But alongside the fear was a fire, stoked by the rightness of their cause and the bond that was forming between human and alien, a bond that promised to reshape their worlds. As Eli and Seraphil moved stealthily towards the shuttle bay, the facility remained eerily silent, the only sounds being the distant hum of machinery and their synchronized footsteps. They reached a junction, where corridors branched off towards different sectors of the hold. Eli paused, consulting the digital map displayed on his wrist device. He chose the left corridor, less monitored but longer, calculating every risk with precision. Suddenly, Seraphil tensed, her body stiffening in Eli's arms. "Wait," her voice echoed in his mind, a whisper yet commanding. He halted, scanning the corridor ahead where shadows merged with the artificial light. There. She pointed with a subtle nod towards a barely discernible anomaly in the pattern of darkness. Eli squinted, then saw it. A security drone, its sensors sweeping the area methodically. Quickly, he pressed himself and Seraphil into a nearby alcove, concealed by the overhanging structure. The drone passed by, oblivious to their presence. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, and resumed their cautious advance. Navigating through the hold's labyrinthine corridors was like moving through a puzzle box designed by a paranoid mind. Every turn and open door posed potential discovery, every silent alarm a step closer to capture. Eli's skills were tested to their limits, relying on both his training and the intuitive nudges from Seraphil, whose senses seemed to extend beyond the physical. They were close now, just one corridor away from the shuttle bay. The hardest part awaited: crossing the bay undetected and boarding the shuttle without triggering the security protocols. The bay was vast, filled with shuttles and transport crafts of various sizes, the walls lined with tools and cargo. Eli set Seraphil down behind a stack of supply crates, taking a moment to survey the area. 2 technicians were visible, engrossed in their maintenance tasks, unaware of the fugitives hiding in plain sight. He turned to Seraphil, their eyes meeting in silent communication. "Stay here. I'll distract them," he transmitted his plan. Seraphil nodded, her expression unreadable yet trusting. Eli crept from their hiding spot and picked up a small tool from a nearby workbench. With a calculated throw, he sent it clanging across the bay, drawing the technician's attention to the far end. As they moved to investigate, Eli gestured to Seraphil, and together they slipped across the open space to the designated shuttle. Eli quickly accessed the shuttle's control panel, his fingers flying over the keys with practiced ease. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they hurried inside. Seraphil took a seat, her form shimmering slightly as she adjusted to the new environment. Eli powered up the engines, the gentle rumble growing steadier under his touch. "Strap in," he said, glancing over his shoulder. Seraphil secured herself as Eli initiated the launch sequence. They were moments away from freedom, the anticipation a tangible force within the confined space. Just as the shuttle began to lift, alarms blared throughout the bay, the sound piercing and relentless. Eli's heart sank. They had been discovered. He pushed the throttle, urging the shuttle forward with all its might, the craft responding with eager acceleration. The bay doors were starting to close, an automatic lockdown procedure. Eli calculated the narrowing gap, pushing the engines to their limits. The shuttle shot through the closing space with inches to spare, the metal doors scraping against the hull with a screeching protest. Once clear of the hold, Eli didn't relax. The real challenge lay ahead. Space around the facility was heavily monitored, and they would need to navigate a minefield of sensors and patrols. He set a course for the nearest nebula, its dense gas clouds perfect for evading pursuit. As the stars blurred into streaks of light, Eli felt a new weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by a different burden, one of hope and the vast unknown that stretched out before them, filled with possibilities of sanctuary and new alliances. They were not just fugitives. They were catalysts for change. Their actions a potential spark for greater shifts across the galaxies. The nebula loomed ahead, a vast cloud of gas and dust lit by the light of nearby stars, casting eerie shadows and brilliant flares of color against the void. Eli maneuvered the shuttle with a deft touch, guiding it into the cover of the cloud. The sensors immediately began to flicker and buzz, confused by the reflective and refractive properties of the nebular materials. Inside the shuttle, the atmosphere was tense. Seraphil watched the swirling mists outside with an intensity that matched Eli's focus. "This will shield us temporarily," she communicated, her voice echoing in his mind. "But they will not give up so easily." Eli nodded, well aware of the stakes. "I've set up a scattering pattern for our exhaust to make us harder to track. We should be able to make it to the rendezvous point before they can organize an effective search." Their destination was a secret base, located in an asteroid belt on the outer rim. known only to a select few who opposed the oppressive tactics of the central authorities. It was a haven for outlaws and rebels, a place where the desperate and the daring made pacts for the sake of survival and defiance. As they plunged deeper into the nebula, the external commotion of the universe seemed to quiet, muffled by the cosmic fog. Eli used this time to adjust their trajectory, masking their path through the chaotic natural phenomena of the nebula. The shuttle system strained against the gravitational pulls and magnetic anomalies, but Eli's adjustments kept them on course. Seraphil, sensing his concern, laid a hand gently on his shoulder. Her touch was calming, infused with a quiet strength. "You are skilled, Eli, more so than any pilot I have known," she reassured him. The compliment, coming from a queen who had traveled the stars, warmed Eli more than he expected. Suddenly the console beeped sharply, a warning signal breaking their brief moment of peace. Eli checked the readings. A fast-moving object was approaching, its trajectory aggressive. "Looks like we've got company," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. "It is likely a scout drone," Seraphil suggested, peering over the console. "They send them ahead of the enforcement ships." "Can we outrun it?" Eli asked, already calculating their odds. "We do not need to outrun it," Seraphil responded with a hint of a smile. "We need to outsmart it." Quickly formulating a plan, Seraphil directed Eli to decrease their speed and adjust their angle of approach towards a particularly dense cluster of nebula gas. As they neared the cluster, Eli deployed a series of flares, the bright, burning lights drawing the drone's sensors towards them. As the drone followed the flares, Eli reversed their throttle, sending the shuttle in a sharp arc around the cluster. The drone, deceived by the sudden loss of its target, continued towards the flares, allowing them a critical window to escape. "Nicely done," Eli exclaimed, relief washing over him as he put distance between them and the drone. With the immediate threat evaded, they continued their journey through the nebula, making subtle adjustments to avoid any further detections. Hours passed, each minute stretching out as they navigated the complex landscape of space. Finally, the edge of the nebula came into view, the darkness giving way to the scattered light of distant stars. Beyond lay the asteroid belt, and with it, the promise of refuge. Eli set their coordinates, his eyes on the sensors, vigilant for any signs of pursuit. As they exited the nebula, Seraphil turned to Eli, her expression solemn yet hopeful. "We are not yet safe, but today you have given us a chance for justice, for freedom." Eli met her gaze, feeling the weight of their shared purpose. "We'll make it," he affirmed, not just believing it but feeling it deep within. "We'll make it, and we'll start making things right." Ahead, the asteroids awaited, a new challenge and a new hope, their rocky forms a maze of potential safety and danger. The shuttle sped forward, its passengers ready for whatever awaited them, their alliance sealed by trust and the shared vision of a future rewritten. The asteroid belt was a chaotic tapestry of rock and ice, each piece orbiting in a dance dictated by the physics of celestial mechanics. Eli deftly guided the shuttle through the field, his eyes constantly scanning for the most stable path that could provide cover and minimize their exposure to any pursuers that might still be lurking at the edges of the nebula. Seraphil watched the asteroids pass, her face reflecting the starlight that filtered through the cockpit. Her mind, linked intermittently with Eli's to maintain their strategic planning, was a whirlpool of tactical considerations and distant memories of her own world, another place of natural beauty, now painfully out of reach. As they ventured deeper into the belt, the sensors picked up a signal, an encrypted beacon that was broadcasting from a nearby asteroid, the rendezvous point. Eli adjusted their course, steering the shuttle towards the source. The asteroid appeared uninhabited, a barren rock surface pockmarked with craters, but hidden within one of these craters was the entrance to the rebel base, cleverly disguised to avoid detection. Eli maneuvered the shuttle into the crater, the rocky walls enveloping them in shadow. As they approached what appeared to be solid ground, a section of the asteroid's surface began to shift, revealing a hangar bay door that slid open silently. Eli piloted the shuttle inside, and the door closed behind them. plunging the hangar into darkness before lights flickered on, illuminating the interior. They were greeted by a small crew of rebels, diverse beings from various species, each marked by the rugged life of fugitives and freedom fighters. A human woman stepped forward, her uniform patched and her eyes sharp with intelligence. She introduced herself as Commander Lyra Kane, the leader of this cell. Eli Walker, and this is Seraphil, the Yearlix Queen, Eli introduced, helping Seraphil out of the shuttle. The crew bowed slightly, a gesture of respect for the Queen. Commander Kane's gaze lingered on Seraphil, recognition and something akin to reverence flickering in her expression. Your arrival was anticipated, but still, it's a relief to see you both safe. We've prepared quarters and we'll discuss the next steps after you've had a chance to rest. The base was carved into the asteroid, a network of tunnels and chambers that served as living spaces, a command center, and storage areas. The walls were lined with equipment and screens that displayed various data streams, monitoring space around them for any incoming threats. Eli and Seraphil were shown to their quarters, simple but functional. Once alone, they had a moment to reflect on their situation. Seraphil turned to Eli, her voice a mix of gratitude and concern. You have sacrificed much to bring us here. The path forward will be fraught with more danger. Are you prepared to see this through to the end? Eli nodded, his determination clear. I didn't start this just to step back at the first sign of safety. We're going to expose what's happening at the hold and demand justice for all those affected. Seraphil placed a hand on his arm, her touch light. Then we shall prepare together. The council will not be easily swayed, and our enemies are powerful. But I believe in the righteousness of our cause. That evening, in the makeshift mess hall, Eli and Seraphil joined Commander Kane and her team. They discussed various strategies and shared intelligence on the latest galactic developments. The mood was somber yet hopeful. Each member of the group understood the stakes and the value of the alliances they were forging. As the meeting concluded, plans were set into motion. Eli and Seraphil would continue to work closely with the rebels, preparing to make their case to the Galactic Council. With each step, they built not just a strategy for survival, but a campaign for change, driven by the belief that even the smallest light can hold back the darkness. The days leading up to the council meeting were a blur of preparations. Seraphil and Eli worked closely with Commander Kane and her team to gather all necessary evidence and testimonies from other victims and witnesses of the hold's cruelties. Each piece added weight to their case, building a comprehensive dossier that they hoped would sway the Galactic Council. The council convened on a massive space station that orbited a neutral planet, chosen for its location at the crossroads of major hyperspace routes. The station was a marvel of engineering, its vast halls and chambers designed to accommodate the diverse species of the galaxy, each with their own environmental needs. Eli and Seraphil, accompanied by Commander Kane and a small delegation, arrived at the station, the gravity of their mission palpable. They moved through the throngs of representatives, diplomats, and other delegates, each absorbed in their own affairs and politics. The council chamber was an immense dome, with seating arranged in a tiered circle around a central speaking platform. As they took their place, the chamber filled, a cacophony of languages and communications filling the air, translated instantly by the station's advanced systems. When it was their turn to present, Seraphil stepped onto the platform, her presence commanding silence. Eli stood behind her, his support unwavering as she began to speak. Her voice carried clearly, imbued with the dignity of her position and the injustice she had suffered. Esteemed members of the council, Seraphil began, her image being broadcast to screens throughout the chamber. I stand before you not just as a queen of the Yearlix, but as a representative of countless beings who have been wronged by those who wield power without accountability. She detailed the atrocities committed at the hold, supported by visual evidence and personal accounts, including her own. The data was irrefutable, the testimonies heart-wrenching. Eli watched the council members, noting their reactions. Some were visibly moved, others uneasy, and a few clearly skeptical. As Seraphil concluded her presentation, the floor was opened for questions. A barrage of queries came, some challenging, others seeking clarification. Eli stepped forward, providing technical explanations and additional evidence, his role critical in bolstering Seraphel's emotional appeal with hard facts. The debate that followed was intense. Representatives argued the implications of dismantling the hold, the political ramifications, and the moral obligations of the council. Throughout it all, Eli and Seraphel stood firm, their resolve clear. Finally, the president of the council called for a vote. The tension in the chamber was palpable as each representative cast their vote. The results were displayed in real time, a tally that grew slowly, each affirmative sending a ripple of hope through Eli and Seraphel. The final count was in their favor. The council passed a resolution to investigate and reform the practices at the hold, with a committee set to oversee the process and ensure compliance. Additionally, Seraphel was to be reinstated as the leader of her people, with guarantees for their safety and sovereignty. As the chamber erupted into a mix of applause and dissenting murmurs, Seraphel and Eli shared a look of relief and triumph. They had faced the council together, turning personal grievance into a catalyst for broader change. Back aboard their shuttle, returning to the rebel base, the weight of their victory began to settle. "We've started something today," Seraphel said, gazing out at the stars. "A change that we must now guide and protect." Eli nodded, his thoughts on the future. "Together," he affirmed, his gaze meeting hers, "we'll see it through." As the shuttle drifted away from the space station, the vast expanse of space around them seemed a little less daunting. Ahead lay challenges, but also the promise of progress and justice. In the quiet of the cockpit, as they journeyed back to continue their work, the alliance they had formed was solidified, not just by shared goals, but by the deep, unspoken understanding between them that they were no longer alone in their fight.